Are music critics too soft these days? Are they too harsh? Should music criticism even be a thing? Today on Aux, these are the questions that I want to discuss. I'm Joe Sonza, and without further ado, let's plug in. I'm Joe Sonza. Together we'll reveal how music connects us with others, culture, and ourselves. This is Aux. Plug in. All right, music criticism. This is an interesting topic. When I was a college student in undergrad, I majored in American musical culture. It's not a degree name you hear every day, right? And it wasn't a standard music kind of degree, although it did hold us accountable as musicians through like theory classes and ensemble requirements. But it was more academic than it was performative. Our classes included, jazz history and rock history and music in the Enlightenment period, where my final was on early Beethoven piano sonatas, where you had to do some music analysis and historical analysis. And a lot of my professors, some of which I keep a good relationship with till this day, are really strong musicologists in their respective field. And anyway, during that time in my life, I was thinking about career, and I always wanted to go the more creative route. I was one of the few majors that wanted to actually have a performance type of career path. Others wanted to work for, say, NPR or for Sirius XM radio and stay in the music industry. And part of the plan B, I guess, or career path that I was considering is music journalism. And one of the classes I took in college, one of the first ones I took for the major was called Writing About Music. And so we read quite a bit of publications from my school newspaper. I used to write reviews on albums and everything. And I really did seriously consider going the music criticism route, but I pretty quickly found out that path wasn't for me, because it never really sat right with me, especially as an artist. Understanding how hard it is to do the thing called music, to actually be what's the Teddy Roosevelt quote, the man in the arena. Everybody in the stands can do their talking, can complain about the performance in the arena, but unless you're actually in it, there's really not much you can say type of thing. And so I found a lot of music criticism would devolve into just people being haters, man, honestly. And music criticism never really sat right with me until recently. I'm talking yesterday. I watched Dijon, who I am a huge fan of. If you don't listen to Dijon, I plead you to. His album Baby is one of my favorite albums of the year. It's on a short list of albums, of my favorite albums of 2025, for sure. I just saw him live here in Brooklyn last week. It was my favorite show I've ever been to in my life. It was unbelievable. Dijon, his band, these are musicians. These are artists. You know what I mean? The only comparison I can give is recently I heard Steve Nash and LeBron James talking about Nikola Jokic on the Mind the Game podcast, and how Jokic just mastered the game of basketball. He's doing things and putting up stats that no one has seen before. I feel like that's how musicians look at Dijon. If you hear Dijon, he's doing things that it's just kind of showing off at this point. It's ultra competitive in terms of mastering the art and craft of music. It's from the mixing, from the vocal to the harmony to the melody to the rhythm. Anyway, I can go on and on about Dijon. But anyway, the thing that catalyzed this video topic for me is he did an over-under with Pitchfork. Pitchfork does this video series where artists would come on and they would do over-under topics. It could be random, even non-musical things like the state of Wisconsin or cream cheese or bell-bottom jeans. And you would say if you think it's overrated or underrated. And music criticism came up as a topic.
I moved around so much that music criticism was like how I learned about things. I mean, I had cousins and stuff, you know, all the early rap music that I grew up around was given to me. But everything when I started branching out and I was not really tethered to a space anymore, I would read a ton of music journalism and just try to figure out what CDs to torrent. And it like really changed my life. I value it quite a bit. I still read a lot of music criticism. I think it's a little bit too soft now. I think all criticism should be like dangerously harsh, actually. So underrated. Pitchfork, honestly, you guys can go harder. I think you can go harder. Yeah, be less kind, I think.
And it got me thinking. And I heard a similar sentiment when I listened to Bon Iver, Justin Vernon, on Songs That Saved My Life with the BBC YouTube channel.
How do you shut off from the noise of the modern world? Because I feel like that's incredibly important for any artist to be able to do, to actually create something unique.
Mm-hmm. It's a good question. I think I've always been, I almost go searching for negative reviews, or I keep my ears out open for people that don't like what we've done, because it's something that I can.
So you listen to the bad things.
Yeah, and they make me laugh. I enjoy them. They make me smile. Not like laugh like I'm making fun of them. It's something I can trust, and that I can. It's sort of a way to center, to make sure I don't get too full of myself, or, you know, they'll say something funny like this is whiny, or whatever, and I'm just like, yeah, it is. You know, like that's okay. And
this idea of seeking out negative reviews that these artists, and what is the reputation of these artists, by the way? Bon Iver, Dijon, they're artists kind of with a reputation of pushing boundaries, of making fresh, innovative, new, experimental, if you will, kind of music. I don't know if that's a term that is kind of cliche at this point. But nonetheless, that's kind of what they're associated with. And newness, innovation. If these are the artists, the innovative, experimental, new artists are seeking sort of negative reviews and criticism, what does that say about their love for the game? You know, how often do you hear an NBA player, to use the same example, to extend the metaphor, talk about they read negative reviews, you know, that they read or they listen to the ESPN analysts that hate their game. Not just as motivation to be better and to prove them wrong, but to see what exactly of what they're saying is right. That got me scratching my head. Maybe music criticism is something to be redeemed, or is a good thing, is something to embrace and lean into. Because for Aux, for this YouTube channel, my goal was to create a space that is inherently optimistic about music, that doesn't like look back at music from the past and be like, the good old days, we lost them. We're losing music to AI and these trash, you know, new artists that don't know how to write original, fresh music. That's just an outlook and an attitude of the future that I just don't share in my personal life. And so with the content that I'm creating, I'm not really interested in baiting off of negativity. At the same time, Dijon just presented me with this new idea, Bon Iver too. Do music critics have a public service of importance? Is their job to be truly harsh and at times at the expense of kindness? Is that for the betterment of the game, for the craft of music? You can tell that the place that Dijon is coming from when he says that is he loves this thing. He loves music. And even if it means breaking my spirit, something that I work so hard to complete, and tearing it apart, I welcome it. If it makes me better, if it makes this thing better, music better, fine, let's do it. I'll roll up my sleeves, I'll get in there, and I trust that I'll be better from it, or music will be better from it. There's something almost Nietzschean about that. Now, if you're not into the philosophy and all that, forgive me, you came to the wrong place though. I'm not gonna lie, I'm into it. The psychology, the philosophy, we're gonna roll up our sleeves and get into that stuff. Friedrich Nietzsche talked a lot about, he had a disdain for all things soft, right? All things that aren't like merited by a will to power, by strength. This idea that he called of an Ubermensch, somebody, a Superman who can look into the face of an abyss, a dark abyss, and dance above it anyway, not cowering in fear and tucking their tail, and, you know, not expecting to be pampered in this life or things to fall on our lap on a silver platter, that the true joys and vigors of life are ultimately earned through a will to power. There's something very Nietzschean in what Dijon is saying. Like, bring on life as it is. Like, the ugly and the quote-unquote beautiful. The suffering and the good with the bad. And so I'm not interested in my ego being inflated or false praise or me being called a genius, which I could be accused of, because I literally called Dijon a genius in my reaction video to the album. I still stand by that. Sorry, Dijon, if I hurt your feelings by calling you a genius, or I'm not hitting the mark in terms of what a music reviewer, not that I'd call myself that, I don't really identify that. That's not really the purpose of Aux and this channel, is reviews or reactions. It's really education, which leads me to my next point, that music criticism often defaults to trying to be the authoritative interpretation of a thing. Like this, rather than teaching me, like Dijon said, the value he got from music criticism is he learned from it. Rather than teaching me how to listen, rather than teaching me something about what the song is or what it's doing or what the album is or it's doing, it's just explaining or interpreting and explaining the symbolism or the references and the lyrics or the samples came from here. And now I'm armed with all this knowledge that I could bring to the cocktail party on, oh, they sampled this early 90s rap song from Detroit or whatever the case is. You know what I mean? Like, to be armed with these little trivia tidbits as opposed to being taught how to touch, how to interact, how to listen for real. If that's the task, if that's the job of the music reviewer, of the music critic, that's an important one, and it's not one to be taken lightly. That's where ratings and reviews and stars and scale of 1 to 10s and, scale of 1 to 100s can be really reductive, insanely reductive, and actually counterproductive to evolving this art and craft. Sometimes we leave a movie theater and we're like, what'd you think of the movie? 7 out of 10. 3.5 stars out of 5, or 3 out of 4 if we're going Chicago Tribune, Roger Ebert style. It's easy to collapse what we think, or to even skip thinking altogether, into just a number, rather than focus on qualitative observations and actually articulating our thoughts about the thing itself and those thoughts' implications on how we think about music in general, which the greatest of music does, right? Which led me to think about this essay that I read for the first time in college that stuck with me. It was called Against Interpretation by Susan Sontag. And the idea of the essay, it's pretty short. I mean, this PDF's 5 pages. It's double-sided, so I guess 10 pages. The idea is we worship interpretation and meaning above affect and how the thing makes us feel. When we listen to music, we're like, what is this about? Versus, you know what I mean? We look up the lyric meaning and interpretation on Genius before we create opinions of this song ourselves, or we go to Twitter or Instagram or social media or watch a reaction video on TikTok to help form our ideas of the thing. What does TikTok think of the new Taylor Swift album before I make my own judgment call, or not even judgment call, but like value my own experience of it? And that's just step one, value my own experience. And then in my valuation of my experience, what is prioritized? Is it my experience itself, or is it my interpretation of the thing? And she has this quote at the end here. And my Miami Heat are playing right now in the NBA Cup game as I record this, so I need to catch that. What is important now is to recover our senses. We must learn to see more, to feel more, or to hear more, to feel more. Our task is not to find the maximum amount of content in a work of art, much less to squeeze more content out of the work than is already there. Our task is to cut back content so that we can see the thing at all. The function of criticism should be to show how it is what it is, even that it is what it is, rather than to show what it means. The lines can get blurry, my friends, between showing that a song is what it is and trying to show what it means. To be able to tell the difference between the two is the work of a masterful music critic. I'm Joe Sonza. This is Aux. Thanks for plugging in.